And we also do have joining us Shaniqua McClendon from the film.
Hello. Thank you.
So, Mr. Branch, if you would be so kind as to maybe give us some background information on what inspired you to do the piece and how you and Shaniqua came into contact with each other.
Will do. First of all, thank you for coming. This is really exciting for us to be here this afternoon. The inspiration. My name is Phill, my brother's name is Abdul Qadir Mustafa, right? And so even with our own lives, I've seen differences in how we've been met by our names, right? And then after I graduated college, I went and lived in LA, Hampton, by the way. I moved to LA, and a lot of my friends who were writers and artists took jobs as substitute teachers, and they would come home and read these names, and they had so much trouble with the rosters. And I had a good friend who called me one day, and she had really messed up this particular day. And she had a girl, and she tried really hard to pronounce it, and she just said Cashmania, and the whole class laughed, and the girl said, "My name is Cashmania," and she was like, "This child's name is Cash Money," and we began this conversation about naming, and at first it was just humorous, right, like, what's happening? And then as I started to do more research and to really think about the impact that this sort of name bias might have on Cashmania, who is just a girl who was given this name, I started to think about, we need to discuss this because this isn't something that this girl should be faced with dealing with because she didn't name herself, and I wanted to start talking about those things. All right. And Shaniqua I actually met at when I first started trying to find Shaniqua, a lot of people were distrusting. They thought I was going to make fun. And so I started emailing and Facebooking every Shaniqua I could find, and she showed up for a talk that I gave in DC, and we had this great conversation, and she became part of the project. So it's been really great to kind of have her be part of this. I think she says a lot that I think sticks with you about sort of how bias impacts you as a human being, not just on a resume, but just as a person living, how these biases play out. You have a question?
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
And so, Shaniqua, can you speak about what being a part of this project has meant for you, or how that's affected your life in any way?
It's been great. This is something that I've dealt with, obviously, my entire life. I have a twin sister. Her name is Chantel. And when I told her I was participating in this documentary, she just said, "I had no idea you were going through these things. You're the first Shaniqua I ever met, obviously." And, you set kind of the standard for what I believe people with your name, what they were. So for me, it's been great to share the story with more people. Maybe last week or 2 weeks ago, we did a screening in DC, mostly for my friends, and it was actually pretty hard to watch because I don't talk to them about this a lot. I don't know if they've made assumptions about me before, but we're friends now, and just me being honest in that film was a lot for me to now have them know that this is how I feel. And specifically, I've talked to Phill about this after seeing the documentary for the first time a few weeks ago. And the two women, the two light-skinned women who are Jasmine and Rachel, that was hard to watch. We were at a brunch. Rachel's roommate is one of my really good friends. And so I know Rachel. And I think they were trying to be as PC as they could, but still telling the truth about how they feel. And, my friend Jasmine, she has these brunches all the time for this group she has called Embrace Her. It's about women's empowerment. And so to know that I've sat in these brunches with them that many times, and they've had these thoughts about me, and maybe they didn't specifically think about me when they thought these thoughts, but in general they have these thoughts about women with the name Shaniqua or women with names like mine. So, now I don't know what half of my friends think, but I'm hoping that this can change the conversation.
Right, and in the beginning, it was sort of the piece about being a teacher, and I'm also, I went to Hampton, I work at Howard right now, but as a professor, I get the class roster too, and I think about my students and how they're brilliant and how they might be fighting uphill just because of their names, even though they are brilliant students. And then also for me as a foster parent, I am a foster parent, and I get, I have beautiful children come into my home who have names, right, that maybe aren't Lisa and David or anything like that. And they're beautiful kids who have already been dealt a hard hand. And I think about how much they have to fight just to survive, and then to think that, let's say they make it through and they graduate college, and then someone's not going to give them a name give them a job because of their name. So in many ways, the meaning and the importance of this film has changed as I have changed, as I have taken on new responsibilities. So I just think the topic itself is really important. And what shifted for me in terms of making was the Cracker Barrel Shaniqua. My first conversation with her, because up until then it had been sort of impersonal. It was about jobs and things like that. But she's been hurt personally. She talked about how people would say things kind of in her face, at work. And she was, as we talked, she was sort of emotional about it. And that had an impact on me. And then also the fact that she said that it was mostly African Americans who treated her this way. And as I talked to Shaniqua and other people, even though, like the professor says in the film, Kafani, that we're faced with white supremacy, which is sort of maybe the larger context, right? Everyone I talked to talked about how their black friends, co-workers, and everybody else, people at church, treats them. They weren't talking about how white people treated them on the day-to-day. They were talking about how their black friends treated them. And I thought that was fascinating, because that's not where I thought initially the conversations would go.
And just to add on to that, I think the reason that sticks so much is because as black people, you think other black people are a safe space. And so when you don't get that kind of love and encouragement from them, why are we talking about what white people need to do if we can't even find that in our own community?
I mean, I have questions for them, but if you all have questions, feel free to come up to the microphones that are placed in the audience, or if you are further back and you want to raise your hand, I will gladly bring the microphone over to you.
We love questions.
Okay. Or can we?
Conchita, sorry.
Well, my name is Charles, so I guess I kind of qualify.
Nothing wrong with that.
And my mother gave me a middle name, so I wouldn't be 80 years old and somebody called me Junior. I worked in the urban district, Camden, New Jersey, for about 29 years. I had all the gambit of names. The one was the apostrophes with no letters missing and all that stuff. What made you, well, let me put it this way, did you see any differences in any other cultures with the name changes? Because I worked in a predominantly Hispanic and African American district, and I noticed that the Hispanics were kind of taking on the same dynamics with their children's names, kind of moving away from a cultural naming to a amalgam of different things to name their kids. So was that a thought, or did it ever come across in your research?
It did come up. I decided to focus in terms of the film, but one of the stories that was told to me, there was a woman who named her child Jesus, right? Her husband's name was Jesus, and she hated that. She didn't want that. He hated that because he had struggled with kids calling him Jesus, and he didn't want it. So she said, no, this is important. So she named him Jesus. And then quickly after he was born, I think within months, people began to make fun, ask questions, her coworkers, and she immediately felt the regret of the name. And then she went back and they changed the baby's name to, I believe it was Chase. And I remember hearing that story that they went so far the other direction, right? And one of the things she talked about was, this wanting to still kind of have these cultural ties, but the tide was turning a little bit, and those names weren't even being as respected within the community, and people were doing new things. So I think within different communities there are these battles. I had a friend approach me after seeing the film for the first time, and she's a white woman. Her name is Marcy. She said she hated her name because in her world, Marcy might have been associated with a certain level of class as well, and she didn't like that. And she said she related to this film in that way. So I think what I saw is that there are these kind of issues within cultures, but I think what is different is that when someone hears Shaniqua, they don't see her ever. Like she has to show up with a resume and smile and talk for someone to give her a chance. And I don't know that Marcy has that same kind of trouble.
Great piece, though.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hi. My name is Pat, and thank you. All I can say is thank you, because I named my daughter Kyle, and then we had the whole issue of gender. And, it was only until just a couple of weeks ago that she said, "You were so forward-thinking, you had the gender-neutral thing going." But it's a very personal thing, as you said. I'm struggling with, there are so many things in this film to unpack, so many, that I was wondering if you could cheat a little bit and give us an idea of what was the prevailing issue that kept bubbling up over and over again. It was hard for me to decide, and maybe you want to leave it that way. But I'm wondering whether or not there was something so compelling in these stories that if you were to take the next step, you might go toward this particular area of this topic. Can you narrow it down a little bit for us?
I think for me what came up was that there were so many things to unpack just related to these names, right? And I think what I've said after I've finished it is that, what I've left with is, we need to treat people better in general, right? And in all the ways that we demean and treat people poorly, and the implications of those things. And I think hearing these women and men talk about how their names have been used against them, I think, the dialogue within community was important to me. At first it wasn't that. It was about what maybe white people were saying about us, but I think the dialogue within community was a really important thing for us to hear, for us to have an honest discussion about how we feel and about why we name and how we name. I thought for me that was really important. But there are many things, and I think, so it's kind of take away what relates to you.
This has been an ongoing dialogue, and I wanted to know if you thought about addressing the conversation from before, when Bill Cosby, before his latest situation, put out the same kind of thing about how, black people should name their children, and then Michael Eric Dyson's response about Condoleezza Rice and Shaquille O'Neal and now Barack Obama. Did that end up on the cutting room floor, or is that something that you didn't?
Bill Cosby didn't come up. We're having these discussions walking down. I've been in shuttle vans and taxis and Ubers all week with people, and they say, "Well, why am I here?" And I say, to discuss this particular film, Searching for Shaniqua. And I've had people, I'm saying it, the name of the film is Searching for Shaniqua. And then I've had on multiple occasions, people turn back and say, Searching for Shaniqua, right? I don't need to talk to hear Bill Cosby's piece. Forget them. What's happening in this room is important to me. And I think, and I understand the question, but I think there's so much happening at the ground level. I think we needed to really just focus on that, right? Because we're interacting with each other every day. And I think it's important for us to be kind of talking about what you're saying to your friends, or what you're thinking about what your friends are naming their kids, and have those sort of in-house discussions that are where we can actually touch the people. I think that was important. So it didn't end up it came up in the research, certainly. But I felt like what was just happening within the people who I was meeting every day was so important that I didn't need it.
Mm-hmm. This film was heavy. It resonated. Yeah. I named my brother when I was 5 years old. I named him Jason, after my hero, the Red Power Ranger, right? Okay. And I was proud of that decision, My name is Haywood Lorenzo Perry III, and I would have been the fourth if my great-grandfather had had a middle name. And so I understand the power of a name, but I also understand the power of humanity, right? And a person's personhood. And so can you speak a bit about what most surprised you within the black community? Because you've already alluded to it, right? That initially you thought that it was going to be the applications piece, the jobs piece, But seeing Shaniqua, who worked at Cracker Barrel, and the sadness in her eyes because of the black patrons who demeaned her without knowing anything about her saddened me. And so I'd love to hear more about your thoughts about the kind of the humanity of the people, and also from you, Shaniqua, about the humanity that you saw and that you expressed as well.
Thank you for that. I think for me, it was everybody's story was similar and not at the same time. And I think, again, having Shaniqua speak to me and then meeting this Shaniqua and talk about, I think the story that Shaniqua McClendon told me that really resonated, that made me want to really talk to her in this film was that, and it didn't end up, I'm just going to tell it. So she tells this story about how she would date, and she had this one particular guy she was dating, and he said to his parents, her name is Shaniqua, but she's different. Like, and I thought about how dating is awkward as it is, right? And then someone saying to you, you know, she's not like the rest, and it's just like, how awful is that? And that person thinks that's a compliment. And just think about how many ways in a day is someone facing this at Starbucks where they don't want to, you know, spell your name properly, or they can't spell your name properly. Teachers telling you what they're going to call you. And I began to think about how we're hurting each other and how people are hurting silently, because she hasn't told these stories, right? So how people are hurting, little girls and little boys are hurting, because this is happening to young, you know, to men as well, are hurting silently, not feeling like they have a voice, right? So part of this for me that I hope resonates is to sort of like, tell your story. And maybe if people hear how you feel, hear how this is impacting you, and tell the other side too, yeah, I make fun of the names, right? Be honest about that. And then maybe we can do something different. It could be a little bit better.
Yeah, and just to kind of speak to the humanity piece and just that within myself, I think probably when I got to college is when I really realized that people thought things about my name, and I think it created a bit of a hard exterior. And I don't say this because it's myself, but I'm a really nice person. And I try to be that way. I'm really compassionate, you know, I'm really empathetic, and I just try to be kind to people. But when I started dealing with this and realizing that people didn't know any of those things about me, and they were still able to, you know, make all these assumptions about who I was just because of my name, it's taxing. And, you know, you can either feel the way that Shaniqua from Cracker Barrel felt, which that broke my heart, because I just got a harder exterior, and it was just like, forget y'all. I mean, I don't got to deal with this. I'm focused on what I'm trying to do with my life. But I also got the luxury of doing that. I don't know her full background. And I mean, I didn't come from any kind of wealthy background or anything. But I've just been blessed to be in the right opportunities to kind of showcase who I am and meet the right people who can help me showcase who I am so that I can move forward. But it does affect you, and I think it may have like taken away a little bit of the nicer person that I am until I get to know people. And just again with the interacting with black people, I remember I was at Panera once. When you put in your order, they asked for your name. I told him my name as I was handing him my debit card, and he said, "Is there another name I could use?" And I said, "No, I just told you my name. I can spell it for you, or you can read it off of the card." And he's like, oh, okay. And, you know, he types it in, but again, it's not that hard. Ask me how to spell my name. I will tell you. You can literally read it, and to me, phonetically, it reads Shaniqua, so I don't know.
Well, I like to just say thank you, because the film was very thought-provoking, and for me, my name is Hayward Sturdivant Jr. So I've had the flip side where, you know, they think that I'm white, you know, because they look at my name, and then when I walk into an interview, whatever, they go, "Oh, snap. That's not who I thought it was." So I had a customer, I'm a restaurateur, and I had a customer, he asked me what my name was. I told him it was Hayward Sturdivant Jr. He's like, "Sturdivant, where's that from?" I said, "It's Dutch German." So he goes, "I'm gonna call you Dutch." So he took my name, you know what I'm saying, and made it something else that it really wasn't. So he gave me this nickname of Dutch because my name has a Dutch-German heritage. So I understand what you guys are saying. I mean, it's very, very important. And as someone that also has some HR responsibilities with hiring frontline people, sometimes people who are not as educated or whatever, I understand it because I can find myself being stereotypical at times because I've had Quenisha, Shanisha, LaQuisha, Venetia, whatever, all work for me. So, you know, I understand that, you know, it's not always in a name. Like you said, you can't judge a book by its cover. So, again, I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just add on two things to what he said? The fact that that man took that and made his name something that meant something to him, that's what makes me mad that Black parents can't do that and, you know, give their children a name that means something to them. They should have the power to do that. If this random man thought he had the power to do that for someone, and now I cannot remember the other thing that I was going to say, but maybe it'll pop back in my head.
My name is Jacques Dillard. No, I'm not French. No, I'm not Haitian. No, I'm not African. I've been called Jacquez, Jacuz. Somebody called me Jacuzzi the other day. I kind of like that one. It was kind of hot. But going through this experience, and unfortunately, I'm embarrassed to say, succumbing to the pressures of convenience and just telling people, my name is Jay. Oh, J, J, A, what? No, just one letter, J. That's all you need to know. And it's for similar reasons. All of the assumptions and the explanations and all of that unnecessary, you know, nonsense that takes the focus away from who you really are. It's unfortunate, but I can say, just as you said with this brother whose new name is Dutch, and I'll be calling him that when I get out of here, can we applaud Black folks' ability in so many ways, including naming, to bring their creative skills to the table and be able to even make up new names? I mean, you know how hard it is to name your child something different that maybe no one's heard before? I know we have a million Shaniquas out there on the planet now, but there was first one where somebody said, wow, I've never heard that before.
They still say that.
And right, and between us, maybe the Asians and Native Americans, we're the only three cultures that I know of that even come close to having that ability to create names and other things on the fly. So big up to us for being able to do that.
Phill, how are you doing? I took so many different things from this movie. First of all, my name is Mia, and I am one of the Lakendras in the world. So I've always loved my name, and I've been really proud of it. And you know, the first day of school, I had a different experience where they were going to call me Maya or Mia. And then I had two daughters who, the first one, because I was in the princess mode, her name is Sarah Mackenzie. And I got the opposite response from my friends who were saying, you named her Sarah? And then I had a second daughter. Her name is Aaliyah McKell, which is completely different. So everyone said, well, you were in a different space when you named Aaliyah. But I'm also a pediatrician, so when I have my patients come in and they tell the name, I want to thank you, because I have been guilty of conforming, because I have looked at my little patients and gone into the room after birth and said, so what are we going to name them? And they would tell me, and I can't say names because of HIPAA, but different things, and I would say, okay, you know, all right, well, that's different, you know, but now I'm really going to say that's different. So I want to thank you for that, because just hearing this piece, I have grown to maybe not be part of the conforming, but maybe the encouraging of creativity with my patients. And because I've thought about, oh, when you have an application, what are they going to think? But now it's like you're thinking of a different name and you are being creative and giving them a boost versus trying to put them in a box. So I want to thank you for the video, or for the film.
So I appreciate all the comments and all the feedback that we have for our two speakers. If you have a specific question for them, that's great. If you have, a comment or a sentiment about how this piece touched you, definitely feel free to dialogue with them afterwards. But after the people who are at the podium, we're going to end the question and answer portion.
My name is Marlise, and I wanted to thank you for such an enlightening film. Shaniqua, I was really interested in what you will be studying and whether or not you think participating in this film will influence what you do later. And I just wanted to tell you that 2036, it would be awesome to have a President Shaniqua.
That is very kind. So I'm going to the Kennedy School of Government. I'll be getting my master's in public policy. Thank you. And I think, well, one, it's not going to go like undergrad where, in class I shrink and, just brace for my name to be called. And I think in general, throughout college, undergrad, I shrunk as a person. I didn't express myself as much. And participating in this film and getting to talk about these stories and realizing that that's part of the reason that I've been less of the person that I really am with strangers, I think I'm going to be more vocal in general as I go throughout my coursework, and specifically the reason I want to go get my master's in more so, let me talk about my admissions essay. The premise of my admissions essay was there's not enough people of color at the table when we're creating policies, which is why a lot of them have adverse effects on people of color. So with that, I think, and participating in this documentary and getting to speak more about the things that I've gone through, that also, I'm keeping that in my head as to why I need to be vocal, the whole reason I'm there, but just what happens when you are not your full self and you don't participate as much as you should. Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Whew. That's an emotional thing for me, Phill. You got me, man. You got me. My name is Shelva, Shelva. This piece, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what to expect when you talked about it years ago that you were going to do this. But I can't thank you enough for this. It is difficult to carry a name like this that doesn't have a meaning. I was named after a white woman that my mother met when she was pregnant with me. I never met her. I did meet another white woman named Shelva in high school, and we were the Shelva Club. And I want to just say thank you for opening this dialogue, because this is a part of our community that we don't talk about. And we need to have the discussion, because you're right, we're naming our children. It carries a lot of weight. You're putting, a name is a heavy thing. It should mean something. It should give you an insight into who you are as a person. And it was a struggle for me to accept that name, Shelva, that doesn't have a meaning, but I've given it one. And my niece's name is Anye, Aunyea. And I've had to help her accept that name that doesn't have a meaning and to give her one. So I want to thank you, Phill, for allowing us to come into this space and have this conversation that needed to be had. And your Hampton family is very proud of you.
I would just like to say thank you so much for doing this film. And not be just because of the names today, but the names from yesterday. Because in the South, many people name their kids Mr., Master, or King, so they wouldn't be called other things. Right. So thank you, and that's heartfelt.
Thank you.
I need to say that you look, in my opinion, so much like First Lady Michelle Obama. And when the other lady mentioned, maybe being the First Lady years from now, that would be wonderful. They have two profiles up. First Lady Michelle.
Being the president.
First Lady Shaniqua. Right. First Lady. She'd be the president. Okay. The other thing, two things. When I think about a lot of things I've heard, I guess it just depends on where your head is. I was born Renee Ward, but I've allowed myself and given myself permission to change my name throughout my life, depending on the space I was in. When I found out I had Native American, I became Morning Star. When I went into a different culture with my heritage, I became Queen Imani. And then when I retired and went into acting, I said, My mom's name was Lady, and when she made her transition, I took on her name, so now I'm Lady Renee. So I think we need to give ourselves more permission to be whatever name we want to be. And like the gentleman who said, the guy said, well, now I'm going to call you Dutch. Like you said, how dare you think you have the permission that I don't even give myself? Yeah. So that's another whole movie.
Searching for permission.
Yes. And then my other question would be, you chose ladies, but did you give any thought to what the men, black men, experienced because of their names as well?
I did, and thank you for that. I did some interviews, and there's so, like the person said, there's so much to unpack just even in this. What I found is that, this story that is largely centered on black women, there was enough of a story here, right? And in terms that black women, what comes with a name like Shaniqua is loud and obnoxious and ignorant and things like that. And I think I wanted to tell that story. I didn't go in initially solely focused on that, but I think once I started hearing these interviews, I felt like I wanted to give black women this space to talk about this thing that's happening to them. And in my research and other interviews with black men they don't face necessarily the loud, obnoxious piece. Is criminal, dangerous, that thing like that. And there's a UCLA study that came out recently that confirmed that's what people think. When they hear these names, they think of someone who's dangerous or scary and things like that. And as I tour with the film and maybe do some workshops and do some lectures, I'll include some of that piece as well and talk about sort of how gender plays a role in this discussion.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hi. I thought it was interesting, Shaniqua, when you mentioned if you were an Ashley, that your experience wouldn't be like that, because I'm an Ashley. And I'm also a doctoral student, and I teach in the City University system, CUNY in New York. And so I see students with all different names. And one of the things that is difficult for me as an educator and as a researcher to reconcile is the reality that you just brought up, right? We know that people carry these biases, and that when people see certain names, this is how people are perceived. And so I was wondering if you could speak to how that space is reconciled, right? The ideal that which we want to achieve, where the name won't matter, but the reality that it does matter.
I think that's what I think happens in this room, is that it's never about 100%. It's about the one. So we have the one pediatrician who's going to make do something different. When I showed the film recently to a small group of people, I had a teacher who talked about how she was sitting in the teacher's lounge with her white coworkers and make fun of the names along with them. And then she realized after watching this, she was just like, I might have been giving them permission to do something other than just make fun of these names. So it changed her. So for me, it's always about the individual taking a moment to think about what it is that they are doing. Because I don't believe there's any way to collectively say that names never matter on the resume, blah, blah, blah. But I think if you're somebody who hires, and you've ever had that kind of bias, if you see this, just take a minute and think about Shaniqua. Take a minute and think about, somebody else who was in the film, Khalifa, who changed her name to Kay Williams, and her mother had to say, I didn't pray for that, right? Think about these women and the people that you know, and do something different. I mean, I didn't start here. I've also, heard names and had reactions, and sometimes I still do. I think, like the woman said, how did we get that name? But I'm also conscious enough to know that if that student's in my class, that I am going to make them feel good about who they are, and not to do anything that makes them feel uncomfortable being in their own skin.
Is there any part of you that worries about that student, or that they will be negatively perceived?
I worry all the time about us, right? So that's nonstop, and I think I already know what's happening. right? My concern, my job as a parent, as a teacher, as a filmmaker, is to do what I can to be an example. And outside of that, I can't do anything more. And I think that just having these dialogues, for me, why I get moved is that it means that one person heard it. And I think that one person makes a difference someplace to some child or to a friend or to their sister. And I think that's all you can do.
Thank you.
All right.
And to add on to the example piece, that's why it's so important to me not to go by a nickname. I know that some young lady somewhere with a unique name, well, I don't know this for sure, but hopefully will see me, and I don't want her to see that I changed, my name to an initial or something that's, easier to digest. Because if I can make one young lady feel, or anyone, feel more comfortable with who they are and then go forward as that person, that means something to me. And I hope that they won't have to struggle with it as much as I have.
Thank you. Thank you so much.